Fox News alert, the Libyan terrorist and the oil deal. Well, the Times of London reporting this morning that Prime Minister Gordon Brown's government released Abdel Basset Ali Megrahi, the only person convicted of the Lockerbie bombing of the Pan Am Flight 103. That was a deal, they say, for oil, not for compassion, because he had prostate cancer, as they've all been claiming. Well, that's according to some leaked government correspondence and letters dealing with the government ministries there. The latest development adds even more outrage for the families of the 270 people who were killed aboard Pan Am Flight 103 that was flying to New York. With us now, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and a Fox News contributor, Ambassador John Bolton with his take. Ambassador, good morning. Always good to see you.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Do you think there was a deal?
Well, the evidence that the Times of London has is two letters from Jack Straw, then the Justice Secretary in the United Kingdom government, basically saying that what he called in his letter overwhelming British interests should dictate that al-Megrahi, the terrorist, would be covered by an agreement they were working on with Libya for prisoner transfers. And shortly after that shift in position by Jack Straw, Libya approved a very significant deal for British petroleum. Now, I think it's also important here to understand Jack Straw had been Foreign Secretary in the Blair government just a few years before. So here was somebody very intimately involved in British foreign relations, explaining to the Scottish authorities what was going on. It's about as dispositive evidence I think you can get that there was an oil for release of the hostage, release of the terrorist deal here.
Yeah, you're talking about oil. It was a $24 billion deal. And we've seen this before. Remember oil for food and Saddam Hussein? The claims that basically France, Russia, and China were bribed to support Saddam Hussein. I remember asking Kofi Annan about that. What are the economic interests and how do they affect national interest, especially with something like this?
Well, one of Libya's principal objectives 4 or 5 years ago was to break out of the sanctions that the United States and others had imposed on his regime for its terrorist activities over the years, including the destruction of Pan Am 103 over Lockerbie. So all of this was really tied together. But the amazing thing is that the British government, which has been denying these past several weeks that it had anything to do with the Scottish decision to release al-Megrahi, the person convicted of blowing up Pan Am 103. Now these letters have come to light. I think there will be a political firestorm in England where the government had been denying that oil or British investments in Libya had anything to do with it. They're really going to have a lot to answer for.
Could it bring down the government of Gordon Brown?
I don't think so. I don't think the opposition wants to bring the government down now. I think it's already in such difficult shape in the British elections that will have to be held early next year. I think Brown's already in trouble. This just adds to a really dismal political situation there. But I think it's going to have an effect on U.S.-British relations because the families of the American victims have felt so strongly about Megrahi's release. And, you know, we have Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi coming to New York for the opening of the UN General Assembly in just a few weeks.
Yeah, he'll be here in a few weeks. Won't be pitching that tent in New Jersey, but right. He'll be here probably sitting in the Security Council right alongside President Obama. You raised that last week. And look, remember the hero's welcome for Megrahi? We have that video of him coming off the plane. It's interesting because in the New York Times this morning, Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi, is denying there's a deal or a quid pro quo. Here's what he said. There was no hero's welcome. There was not a single government official present. So from the Libyan point of view, he says, the reception given to Mr. Megrahi was low-key. Had it been an official welcome, there would have been tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people at the airport. That in the New York Times this morning from Saif al-Gaddafi, Gaddafi's son. Do you buy that?
Well, I think that the real kicker in that article is where he says it's true we didn't mention al-Megrahi by name in the discussions, but the issue was always there on the table. And that's really the way it's done. There's not going to be a document signed by a Brit and a Libyan saying, we will release al-Megrahi if you'll give us the oil deal. It was done with winks and nods and understandings. And I think the surfacing of these two letters in the media in Great Britain indicates there's more to come here. So I think this story is going to keep rolling right along, right up until Muammar Gaddafi arrives in New York.
Yeah, and we will be covering that when he's here at the United Nations, and I know we'll be calling on you. This story far from over. Former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, and Fox News contributor, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Jamie?
In an exclusive interview, former Vice President Dick Cheney